some news came out yesterday illustrating some of the progress that you've made. Can you remind us of the stats?
Well, we issued a lot of stats yesterday, which I'll share with the audience, but perhaps in bite-sized chunks as we go through the session, Richard. You know, they've all had lunch, so conscious of that. But Brett was talking about local sourcing and the work that Jumeirah now, I'm pleased to hear, are doing with Fresh on Table. But obviously we were a pioneer with Atul and the team there. So let's talk a little bit about that. So in February, I think Hilton took the pioneering move here to publicly announce our partnership with Fresh on Table. And we actually committed publicly to source 350 tons of local produce. And how we calculated that was we were going to secure 19 lines, or SKUs for those that know the industry lingo, in 22 hotels across the UAE, and we launched it with our Growth of the UAE campaign. I'm pleased to say that with the great technology that Atul's company has, we actually have, to date, over the last 8 months, secured over 168 lines, not 22, across 30 hotels in the region. And we have secured so far 291 tons locally that would have previously been imported in just 8 months. Looking at how we are going to extrapolate that over a 12-month period, we're going to probably purchase over 500 tons in the UAE alone in local sourcing that would have previously been imported. And if we can put that in kilogram carbon CO2 emissions, that represents now, and I'll just look at my notes because these are big numbers, it represents 6.8 million kilograms of CO2 emissions that we have stopped going into the environment, which is actually an equivalent to 83.1 million food miles, and that's in 8 months. And if I was to put that in a number that people could understand, it actually, according to the US Environmental Protective Agency emissions, which has a calculator, we in that 8 months could have powered 1,465 vehicles on the road for a year, just by switching in the UAE to Fresh on Table.
We'll dive deeper into some of those issues in a second, but first, Atul, good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Hilton and Jumeirah, household names, need no introduction. A lot of people in the industry know you, but for those who are new to your organization, give us the 30-second elevator pitch.
Well, I think the testimony is what you ate over here. So the fresh food you ate over here is the testimony of who we are. So as our mandate is to basically give the farmers their dues, ensure that the food security is well taken care of. There's what we call freshness with no emission. So everything we have on our platform is freshly harvested. I think it gives a great experience to the customer, to our partners like Hilton, Jumeirah, and everybody, and of course people like you and me who actually go and eat the food as well.
And so it's produced here in the UAE? Or
everything we have on our platform is produced here in UAE, and you'll be surprised. We have more than 2,000 SKUs now, which are locally produced. Some incredible amount of vegetables, including fruits, the berries, and you're very welcome to come and visit us at our booth over here. I can assure you that you'll be blown away with the quality of the produce we have over there. And we just onboarded a beautiful farm, which is run by the Zayed Foundation for People of Determination. They do some excellent cheese. So we have some goat cheese from them. We have some Lebanese from them, and I can assure you, it's an experience to taste and savor that. Yeah.
What about the environmental implications of growing food in a desert? I mean, we all remember 20, 30 years ago, these great initiatives in some countries in the region, we'll grow wheat here. And they did, but the irrigation was just astonishing.
No, I think it's a little bit of an overstretch to say I can do rice, paddy, or wheat, or anything like that. But look, today, technology is an enabler. You can grow anything, anywhere. Look at the fish farm in our backyard, right here in Jebel Ali. We simulate the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean in 2 tanks. And in the process, we have some of the best salmon, hamachi, then we have sea bream and sea bass being harvested right in the backyard. So what we have the farms doing over here is probably every bit of technology, whether it is greenhouses, whether it is vertical, horizontal, hydroponics, all kinds. But yes, you have to be very clear of what you can do and what you can't do. So definitely, wheat or rice or anything is not on that list yet.
Let's talk about 2 of the words in the title of this panel discussion, innovations driving the cost challenges. of responsible procurement and sourcing. Brett and Emma, is it more expensive?
You know, you've got to look at it from the point of view that it's not a question of cost. It's a question that we have to do it, right? It's not to the point today where you have a choice, right? And we've seen today with organizations that have embraced sustainability, have actually shown extreme positive results. Even when I come back to my water bottle that we've done. Sure, the initial investment, if you put it from a plastic to a glass bottle and the machinery that you have to invest in, sure, in the beginning it's very expensive. But in time, the return on investment there is twofold. It's very, very quick. And that's the same with everything else we do. If we bring this back to Fresh on Table, it says it everything in the name, right? You're bringing that product fresh onto the table, right from the farm within the day before, sometimes even the morning, right? So all of this comes back to the point that it's not a matter of choice today. We have to do it, and that's where we're focused on everything.
I'll give you one answer. It's not more expensive. That's a perception. And the reason I can say that so confidently and why at Hilton we were so proud to go out as the first key volume drivers in this market is, yes, it is more expensive if you go to farms and you commit to small orders that you stop and start, the farmers can't bank on you and invest. So what we did is we worked really hard with our supply chain and with Atul, and that's why we agreed to all those lines and that volume, because it allowed the farmers to have a consistent volume, and we negotiated a basket that actually, once we committed to it's like once we committed to a certain volume and threshold, it actually meant they could give us a basket of prices. Some were more expensive, others were cheaper, and the basket became cost neutral. Mm-hmm. So for the imported products, we price matched, which meant that we gave a good commercial return to our owners and our stakeholders and investors, because actually it became cost neutral, it was fresh, it supported our travel with purpose strategy, it fed into our storytelling with guests that were visiting the UAE, and we tell them that the microgreens or the tomatoes or the capsicums come from the UAE. They're blown away. So it was a win-win in terms of the experience, the storytelling, travel with purpose, and commercially for our owners. And now, because we're exceeding those volumes and actually buying more lines, and I visited a farm with Atul not so long ago, High Grow, and I met the owner with Atul, and he said, because of you, he said, in 6 months, he showed me all the extra vertical farms he'd put up, and he said, and I've bought another ½ acre and I'm putting up more warehouses, and he said, but this is because of the deal that Hilton secured me. Didn't he, Atul?
Absolutely.
And I believe this is why I wanted to call out all the big operators, because the more of us that buy it, the more volumes, we support the local economy, it drives the pricing. So to answer your question, it can become commercially viable. It's the right thing to do, and it can become commercially viable as well.
And the economies of scale that we're driving by jointly starting to, and just building that volume up, it's tremendous. And we're seeing cost reductions in what we're putting on the table today and putting in the kitchens.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, Brett, for your sake, because you and I both work for Dubai Holding. The radio station I work for is part of the same organization as Jumeirah, and they do care about costs. I can categorically assure
I think
you.
also is a myth that impact and economics don't go hand in hand. I think that's a myth. Because if you give the impact the right kind of audience it wants, I think you can always still make some money out of it. Yeah.
Okay, so it's great that we've got a lot of stuff that's going to be locally sourced, but a lot will still be imported going forward. And one of the points you made to me, Brett, last night when we met was it's like what was your phrase? The second, third, and fourth tier sourcing as well. Sure. And you've got examples not just from your hotel career, but from your previous career.
Yeah, I mean, a good example that we talked about last night, and I think that's the primary objective as we go down this sort of sustainable path, is obviously to understand your supply chain in much more depth, right? And my background is through Nestle, a company that obviously has embraced ESG in a tremendous way. And one of the scandals I was very much involved in was the horse meat scandal of Europe many years ago, where a regulation was passed in Romania to take a lot of the horses off the road, and as a result of that, a lot of the horse meat ended up in the supply chain. And Nestle was tainted by food sources that were where they thought were beef were actually horse meat. Once some of those samplings were done, and we discovered that we were buying meat or buying product that was 9 tiers deep within our supply chain. And this is where it's so important in what we're doing is the connectivity that we create with our suppliers. Right? It's no more a transactional relationship with suppliers. Today, we are harnessing the way that we embrace our suppliers. We're creating long-term relationships so that we understand where these products are coming from. And that's the fundamental part of what we do in ESG and sustainability. We're investing a lot of time in that to understand the source of the product and break that down. And the closer we can get to the supplier, the closer, obviously, we can get to the cost, the closer we can get to the understanding of the source, and obviously then driving things like code of conduct that we do with our suppliers, because obviously we communicate with our suppliers an expectation, right? An expectation of what we want from them, and they need to abide by that, and we do try to be very strong about the discipline that our suppliers keep within that supply chain. And we have to break down those unknown sort of tiers and layers that become a mystery sometimes in some of the products. So as you bring them locally, you understand it better. Yeah? I know where his products are coming from. We've been to the farms, we've seen the products. We've shook hands with the farmer. A lot of the stuff that's coming in, I don't know. I'm doing it through distributors, so you don't know those layers.
Can I ask you about waste, Emma, and managing waste? Because I know, again, you've got some more stats on that, and you've been using a range of measures, partly just common sense measures, ranging all the way through to artificial intelligence.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, I think, we all know that sustainability is absolutely key, and in the food industry, you can't bite the hand that feeds, and the food industry is totally accountable for a third of the world's greenhouse gases, which some people get quite shocked about. And considering we use a third of the world's resources to produce the food, and then we actually waste a third of that food, and we deplete the resources, it's a really, really big, serious issue. And food waste to landfill, apart from being a moral issue and a huge cost issue as well, is also contributing hugely to greenhouse gases. So it's really important that we as an industry get a grip of food waste. And sadly, this region, kilograms of food waste per individual is actually higher than a lot of other parts of the world as well. So in Hilton, it's actually a brand standard to record food waste, or as we call it, organic waste, and it's all recorded in our ESG tracker, Lightstay. So our customers know that we are recording our food waste. And you're absolutely right, we do have a manual SOP, but technology is key and technology is our friend. So we actually work with a partner called Winnow, which we've started to deploy in our hotels. And Winnow has a range of systems, from quite basic ones to quite complicated advanced AI systems. And we measure our food waste, but actually Hilton has a target of reducing its food waste by 50% by 2030, and we've actually put in key metrics around targeting food waste and reducing food waste. We measure it by grams per cover now in the hotels, and they have to report that, and so we've improved our compliance tracking. But I think so far this year, we've done a project with Winnow, and in 21 hotels in 10 countries, we actually saw, with the implementation of Winnow, we saw our food waste reduced by half, which is actually, in this trial, about 600,000 meals. So we are working with Winnow, and we're going on a journey to really look at benchmarking our hotels around food waste per cover. And with also, this is a commercial cost discussion as well. With rising food inflation, which we all heard from Pat earlier today, and also energy costs to produce the food and labor costs to cook the food, it's really crazy that we then not only buy it, use the energy to cook it, and the labour, and then throw it in the bin, which is morally wrong, and then contributes to the environment. So it's actually measuring and reducing food waste is absolutely key, and the hospitality industry needs to wake up to it. And even things like buffets, COVID started it, but we're looking at more aluminium cooking, more individual portions. People are really conscious of the waste on their plate. And we know that the government here in this region and in Saudi is working really hard. And I really feel that at Hilton, we've got really strong compliance targets around it and science-measured targets to go for. So I'm really proud that the team are working so hard to deliver that. And long may it continue, and we've more to do.
Atul, staying with the issue of technology, you say that farm tech is increasingly important. For example, looking at something called a real-time CO2 impact tracker. We're running a bit short of time, but briefly, can you explain what that is?
So it's basically a simple algo which says, okay, I'm buying a local salmon versus a salmon which is coming from, let's say, Norway. Now, how it calculates is if the salmon was to come from Norway, what kind of transportation it is using, what kind of aircraft it is using. So we work with a partner in Germany, who's accredited with the EU, as well as with the Swiss government. So they do the back-end work, and we have, through API program, whatever we spend in terms of miles, we share it with them, and that's how we get the real-time tracker of the CO2.
Can I take one or two questions from the audience, please? We've only got about 7 or 8 minutes left. If I take my glasses off, I can maybe see you. Who's got the first question for our panelists today? I've got loads, but I'm happy to give someone the privilege of asking a question. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Right, I get to ask the question again. Procurement, we're talking mainly about food, but it's not just food, is it? I mean, you talked about bottles as well there. Yeah. What else is on your agenda?
So, I mean, my remit obviously is everything that Jumeirah buys, basically. So we work with, I mean, all the way up to linen suppliers in terms of the supply chain that exists on that side of things. When I worked with the previous hotel company, the actual filling of the duvet was made with recycled plastic bottles. And there's some great stories to pick out of that. Exactly the same with sustainable construction practices and what we're looking at around that side of things. So, the remit from a procurement point of view, again, I keep on coming back to the point of innovation with your supplier, working with our suppliers, which is what obviously we want to do, and finding some of those solutions that will benefit all of us, benefit the industry, benefit the consumer, of course, the guest at the end of the day. And we're seeing that switch. We're seeing that switch in interest to what is your journey? Even with our big corporate customers that are now coming to us and sort of saying, what are you doing? And making choices on their corporate partner based on some of the initiatives that we and other hotel groups are putting in place.
Funnily enough, Hilton from IHG was on my radio show this morning, and he told me that his shoes were made out of recycled plastic bottles. It's clearly a thing in the industry. I must get with the program. Atul.
Mine are not. I'd just like to say, only so far does this agenda go for me, Richard.
In terms of the energy that the farms you work with source, to what extent can they create their own by on-site solar farms? Is that viable now, or might it be in the future? Because again, that could reduce the carbon footprint.
So it's a very interesting question because we discussed this several times over. That DEVA actually has a huge program to go solar. So I think the way the statistics work is by 2025, this country would be home to the world's largest solar plant here. Yeah. So when the grid is already supplying you solar, there's no need for farms to go solar anyways. Yeah.
So it's happening.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what about within properties themselves?
So the capex is always an issue because when you put a solar panel, obviously the cost for generating or the capex cost is much higher. But as I said, I don't think they need to do that because if the grid is already giving you sustainable energy, why should you spend that extra money on creating something which I think is more vanity sometimes? You rather use that money to grow something which is better and spend more money in improving your crop pattern or doing something which is experimental.
Or what about, Brett, in terms of construction, either retrofitting things like solar panels or baking them into the architecture of new builds?
Yeah, so we've got a lot of initiatives underway at the moment, which are focused on either sort of re-looking at some of the energy-sucking solutions at the moment and changing those with solar and other solutions, and that's part of what we're doing. And in the same voice as we start to look at new projects. So that's without debate. I mean, you have to do it. You have no choice. So.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we find it as designers, people asking for LEED certification is pretty much a hygiene point now, whereas 5 years ago you could wear it as a badge of honor, but I think increasingly it's just demanded.
And so the same with some of the automated systems that exist in the rooms and in the passages and the light bulbs and everything that you do around that space. Some of those have been done already, but as you look at what you're consuming and how you change that, particularly in an environment where obviously we spend a lot of time and energy on cooling, right? And that's you have to drive that.
So what's next on the radar? We've talked about local sourcing. We've talked about looking deep into the supply chain. We've talked about cutting down on waste and other measures. What have we not thought about, Emma, that's going to be happening over the next 5 years, looking at the broader issue of procurement and responsible sourcing?
Well, I probably would like to touch on a couple of things, innovation to the topic that actually the panelists and the audience at FHS can go and see at the Hilton stand, actually. So one of the innovations that we're doing, apart from purchasing local across EMEA, not just the UAE, and one thing I'm quite proud of is we started to source olives and olive oil in Saudi Arabia, which people might find really interesting that Saudi Arabia actually has quite a thriving olive oil industry. So our hotels in Saudi. But is actually hotel properties having vertical farms within their properties and on their properties. So if you visit the Hilton stand, you'll see a vertical farm there from a UAE-based company called Crisp Vertical Farming, and we've signed a deal with them to start securing small vertical farms within our properties, and and they're all managed by Crisp, and we again commit to a certain volume with Crisp. So Conrad Abu Dhabi is putting in a 60 square metre vertical farm in the hotel. So guests can actually see the chefs using the microgreens and the herbs from this vertical farm. And also our Hilton La Brise in the Seychelles, we're actually securing a 1,000 square metre farm and vertical farm for the island of La Brise to use to avoid them importing. So I think small vertical farms within properties is going to be a big innovation coming. And I think also innovation around beverage. I've talked a lot about food, but again, if you visit the Hilton stand, probably in an hour or two, you can enjoy a tipple if you want a gin and tonic. The world's first ever climate positive gin has been manufactured. It actually contributes 1.02 kilograms positive back to the environment because it uses nitrogen. And it's called Nada. It's a Gaelic name, and it's actually, as I say, and we're serving it on the Hilton stand. It's available in the UAE after a successful launch in the UK, and we're using microgreens from the Crisp farm to garnish it. So I think there's more innovation to come in beverage, which I don't want to share here in the essence of time, and also we've got a couple of big deals going on at the moment. So there's so much going on in the space. And also kitchen equipment, as Brett touched on. I think there's a lot more to come, and we've got some big projects looking at that. And the other interesting thing is we've actually worked with our architecture and design company, and we've taken about our team, and we've taken in some of our focus and full service hotels about 20% of the kitchen footprint out of the build of the hotels. So that not only saves owners costs in terms of building and fitting the kitchens out, but naturally it means that they will operate more efficiently going forward in the future as well. So I think it's about the actual physical footprints of the properties as well. So hope that answers some other ideas apart from just what we like to eat.
It does indeed. I'm going to take one for the team and head to your hotel in the Seychelles for a week and eat the greens and sip your eco-friendly gin and tonic.
But if you invite me on the show, we might invite you.
Just to comment on the vertical farm, actually, proudly, we just launched, we've just taken produce actually from our first vertical farm in Jumeirah Zarai on the Palm. It's fully operational, and it's actually producing for the kitchen today.
But that is indoor, obviously, yes.
No, it's outdoor.
It's outdoor, yeah.
It's a vertical farm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, but Richard, that's one of the big challenges we have during the hot summer months over here. I think the 3 months are an absolute nightmare, because the temperature can go to 50 degrees sometimes.
Yeah.
So even the best of greenhouses can collapse. So I think a lot of innovation still needs to go in cooling those greenhouses. So I think this is one of the things I've been propagating a lot with industry. Let's put our heads together and let's not look at things in silos. That you've got a great architectural team, who's designing these beautiful hotels. Why not also transfer some technology to these farm partners and help them to cool better?
Yeah.
We're out of time.
The biggest
Lo-
point,
lost
sorry,
thoughts. Go on.
the one point, picking back from Emma was saying earlier, waste. Everybody, if we can do one thing, it's about waste. Yeah? Focus on waste within your own industries, within your own hospitality and entities. Waste, if we control waste, we will control a lot.
Good notes to finish on. Emma, Atul, and Brett, thanks so much for your time. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Richard.